Hello, my name is Domenica Dean, and as a research topic, I'm interested in exploring a possible relationship between the American Settlement House movement and the American labor movement. Both are social justice movements at heart, and I'm interested in seeing what influence these two progressive social movements had on each other, if any. My review of existing dissertations provided a number that were written on these early American social movements, and two dissertations stood out as having acknowledged a possible relationship between the two movements. Meg Streif's dissertation, Boston Settlement Housing Social Reform in an Industrial City, was focused geographically by looking at urbanization and industrialization, specifically in Boston, and the impacts on poverty by the South End and Denison settlement houses. Her research focused on things like the lower standard of living, unsanitary and overcrowded housing, low wages, poor diet, and insecure employment, and how these societal ills were improved by the settlement houses in the locations. Streif's methodology was based on a comprehensive review of archival data, the research of social historians from Boston in the 19th century, records from the South End and Denison House, and other settlement houses across the country, along with other secondary research. Her primary sources were things like annual reports from the houses themselves, house program records. Settlement houses were famous for the different educational programs that they offered, and they kept very good records, so she was able to use these as part of her research. Contemporary journal articles, and even some surviving personal correspondence. She also used narratives from early pioneers in the settlement house movement, people like Jane Addams and Lillian Wald. Streif also interviewed two former settlement house workers from the South End House, and she was able to use their memories and their experiences as part of her research. Margaret McGinnis wrote Response to Reform, an historical interpretation of the Catholic settlement movement 1897 to 1915. This dissertation focused on the role of the Catholic Church in establishing settlement houses and the religious approach versus the secular approach. McGinnis wrote about the interplay between the efforts of settlement houses and early union organizing efforts in the same cities. And in fact, early union meetings were frequently held in a room in the neighborhood settlement house. McGinnis's research was primarily focused on books, journal articles, some archival collections that she was able to get access to, and she also conducted two personal interviews of former settlement house workers as well. Streif and McGinnis came to very similar conclusions in many respects with their research. Both saw the settlement house movement as one of our nation's earliest experiences in boots on the ground social justice reform, whether it was secular or religious. This social justice reform included supporting the growth of labor organizing and the growth of protective labor legislation. Other research that I conducted highlighted the influence that Jane Addams, founder of the very well-known Hull House in Chicago, had on child protective labor legislation. So I believe that researching the two movements and how they work together to influence social reform is worth exploring. Thank you.